stuff tonight.
Yes, we
And
do.
we are live. We're live. It is 5:30 in the OC, or if I was in Phoenix, it'd be 5:32. And it is time for the 19th hole with Bo and Connor while I look for the intro. Yeah.
Shot here. Get up and down. Goodness gracious. Jordan's feet. How about that, man?
What up? I should probably let one of you host this evening.
Don't make it me. I'm going to be insufferable tonight.
Well, I've been preparing the last 3 days for the Fantasy Football Expo, where Trophy Smack has like a headline booth. So that's been the story of my life. Pretty much this whole 2 weeks, but especially this last 3 days, and especially today.
It's all coming to a head. 3 days left, baby. 3 more sleeps.
3 more sleeps. Connor keeps getting booted.
Connor's booting himself.
Well, yeah, so I am not even remotely prepared, but I do know that we are going to be talking about FedEx tournament for at the St. Jude, WGC St. Jude to be specific. But maybe before we jump into that, we discuss. I came in last.
Yeah.
Finally came in last, everybody.
It's okay because Connor wasn't too far ahead of you in second place because I won by 96.5 points last week.
That's right.
Oh, it feels good.
Big
Back-to-back
win.
years at the Wyndham. I do have a really crazy story to share about yesterday. So back-to-back years, I've dominated the Wyndham. It's my favorite tournament on the calendar now because I've had so much success at this one particular tournament in Greensboro, North Carolina at Sedgefield Country Club. And funny how things work out. I was still stoked going into work yesterday. My very first client was this little 86-year-old lady who wanted to get hearing aids that she could wear on the golf course because she says she plays golf every single day. And I said, well, you're going to get along really well with me because I love talking about golf. And she said, well, did you catch that tournament this weekend? And I said, did I? And so I told her the whole story about how I dominated at the Wyndham this year again. And she said, that's a fantastic story. I'm a little bummed because it's the first time in 12 years that I haven't been able to attend the Wyndham because my brother lives on the 14th hole at Sedgefield Country Club. And she said, but it was still fun to watch on TV. And she couldn't believe that I had Tom Kim in most of my lineups. And she was like, what are the odds if you bet on him? And I think it was like 30 or 35 to 1 most played. But if you had bet right after his quadruple bogey on the first hole, I saw up to plus 12,000 odds for Tom Kim after that 8 that he scored on the very first hole. But Tom Kim was in a lot of my lineups. And of course, my best lineup again was in our little 3 head-to-head tournament with just the 3 of us. And I scored 555, which was just shy of my 600-point goal for the week, but it was plenty enough to take home the title. So it was super cool to have such a small world moment the very next day after celebrating my second consecutive successful Wyndham Championship with somebody who's been there plenty of times.
Well, kudos to you. Cheers to Bo. Cheers.
It feels good.
So, it does feel good. I admit it feels good. And the best thing that actually comes out of losing is seeing other people win. In the Team Riser Fall chat, somebody actually posted a screenie that they came in ahead of me in the Team Riser Fall tournament there, and was like, I finally beat Kelly in Phoenix, and that's all that I care about.
I'm glad they didn't reference me because I was right next to you in the standings. I think it was second and third between the two of us.
So I was like,
I was glad I didn't get lumped into that one.
I was actually pretty proud. I was like, you know what? Good for you. You finally beat me. Good job. So yeah, that was fun. I guess I keep waiting for Conor to come back, but he might have lost his internet or something. It seems like
that South Dakota internet it's basically a hamster running on a treadmill, so you never know.
Well, I'm obviously in my little studio today, and I'm really proud because everything's put together and it feels like a little tiny house. So that's nice.
Is it actually cool in your house now?
I have an air conditioning unit that was gifted to me by Trophy Smack so that I can stay cool. And I managed to save a sip of bourbon for tonight. You can hear the train crossing right now, maybe.
So rustic.
It's very, very rustic. And I'm sitting at my little, this is actually a big picture window in front of me. And so I'm just like out overlooking the cute little street, sitting at my cute little bar area. So it's very fun.
And
this is very
the natural lighting is looking pretty good. So that kudos to having really, really good lighting compared to last week. It's night and day.
I know last week was horrible because I had to keep everything covered because it was so hot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have air today. Have no fear. Anybody who was
and we both have bourbon. Conor has
bourbon
bourbon too. Once he hops back in. What are you sipping? The same Woodford as last week?
Woodford Reserve, yeah.
Excellent.
Samesies. What do you have?
So I, of course, have this gigantic collection of bottles that I don't drink fast enough for as much as I collect them. But my favorite brand of bourbon is Booker's, which is it's so good. And Booker's is the unfiltered version from I'm drawing a blank, but Jim Beam Distillery. And so Booker Noe was the Jim Beam, one of Jim Beam's descendants, and it was this is his. They come up with a different, like 2 or 3 or 4 sometimes different batches each year, and they're specially crafted single barrel batches that are really high in proof. Like this one here is the 2021 second batch, which is nicknamed the tag along batch. And it's 63.95% alcohol, so 127 proof. Wow. And it's delicious. And what they tell you to do is to put just a little droplet of water in there just to open up all the flavors. And it like tastes like roasted peanuts and caramel. Oh, it's so good. Like I could just sit here and sniff this all day. And it's delicious.
I see Conor backstage doing weird things. So I don't know.
He's probably making fun of me.
Yes, Richard, you are so right. It is very difficult to find good lighting. When I'm in Phoenix, I have my ring lights. Like basically, I have 3 of them, 1 in front and 2 on each side. And it's almost like that here in my studio because I have 2 windows on each side and I have a huge window in front of me. I'm a little sweaty, but that's okay. It's dewy. It's just dewy.
Misty.
I am drinking just plain Woodford Reserve I enjoy it. It's the biggest bottle that I keep on my shelf for a regular basis. But cheers to Bo for winning last week. Boop. Cheers.
2 out of 3, and I made up for losing by 2 last week.
Oof. Conor, are you back? Hi.
Is it actually working now?
I think
it
so.
is.
Feed that hamster, apparently.
I don't know what's been going on.
Upgrade to the guinea pig model internet.
Seriously.
They're a little bit bigger.
What are you drinking?
What am I drinking?
Yeah.
I was going to do that Jack Daniels I told you guys about. The single barrel Eric Church, Tennessee and all that. But instead, I got this lovely gift from my brother. And so I cracked open the Castle and Key.
Oh, God, I love that.
Yeah, super cool. And that's like, it's a cool story on that one, too. I think this is like batch number 3, but it was the last property owned by Colonel Taylor. So they've done a lot to.
I almost grabbed some E.H. Taylor instead of the Bookers, but I was like, no, I want to go with my favorite. So have you had the tag-along batch yet?
No, hell no. That sounds good, though.
Yeah. I think I have 4 different Bookers up in my cabinet because it's just my favorite. So whenever I see it at a decent price, I grab it. It's usually between $80 and $90 bottle now, but it used to be $70, and that was great. I could just walk up to the store and buy a really nice bottle that lasts a long time for $70, and now it's tiptoeing up. And after tax, you're looking at $100 now for an amazing bottle of whiskey that's still worth it, but it stings a little bit more.
Yeah, I've had a few of them. I think the last one I had was an older one. It was, probably 3 or so years old. Whenever Backyard Barbecue was, that was the last one that I had.
Okay, so back 2020, 2019.
Yeah, I think so. And it was, delicious. And then we cracked one for my brother's wedding, and I cannot think of what batch that was. But yeah, Booker's is awesome.
Well,
can't be unfiltered bourbon.
My bourbon neat like the majority of the time, but it has been so warm in my little studio. I just took a sip and it was hot, so I put some little baby ice cubes in. Oh,
they're so cute.
Baby ice cubes.
Aren't they adorable?
I don't even have to get out of my seat to get them. I'm just like reaching over. There we go.
She's got a beverage drawer in her desk right here, the countertop that she's in. So we got the FedEx St. Jude first round of the playoffs, guys. It's exciting.
Pure excitement.
Riveting.
Here we go. You know what? I know nothing about this course. I literally am the most unprepared hostess of the evening. So I'm going to sit back and let you guys.
Connor's got it. Connor's got TPC Southwind locked down. I know it.
Well, Conor, let's break it down for us, please. Enlighten me.
Internet holds up. I got you. TPC Southwind, Memphis, Tennessee, 72-30-ish yards. It kind of depends on where you pull your numbers from. I've seen it as high as 72-40 and some change. Seen it as low as 17-20. Your par 70, 4 par 3s, all under 200 yards, 2 par 5s, both are completely gettable by pretty much everybody. 12 par 4s, and the interesting thing about that is 7 out of 12 of them are 450 to 500 yards or more. So par 4 scoring is at a premium this week. Dry conditions right now, and kind of playing into that too is they've done some renovations here over the last 12, 18 months. Replacing some of the fairway surfaces, some of the green complexes. So on top of it being dry, I'd say something like 50-60% of the course has had some renovation to it. So you got a lot of rollout, basically, is what I'm saying. Zoysia and Bermuda. So Zoysia is kind of a unique one. We don't get a lot of courses. I think there's maybe only 3 or 4 on the normal tour that use Zoysia. So be a little bit interesting. Some of the rough will be a little bit tricky to negotiate. The green complexes are super easy. Actually, this has got one of the higher hip greens and regulation percentage of most tour stops. The interesting thing though is that they're smaller than average. They're probably on par with some of your West Coast courses. So there's a fair amount of water in play. Got about 11, 12 holes that have water. that'll come into play. There are a ton of bunkers throughout the course. This course actually has the infamous title of getting the most water hazard balls on tour every year. So there's some carnage here. So I would say if you look at the course as a whole, the backside of this course is definitely more difficult. Hole 12 and hole 18 specifically are the two of the hardest, if not the hardest on the course. And that 18th hole really has screwed with some people in the past. You got guys that'll be coming in with a lead and that will evaporate.
It's a bear, guys.
And then the other thing that I'll throw into just in terms of kind of what I would be looking at, I do kind of favor guys that are accurate and long off the tee. I don't think putting is as important this week. Like I said, the greens are relatively small. I don't think you need to focus so much on the 3-putt avoidance metrics that we look at. Bermuda tends to be a pretty good surface for a lot of guys too. So the putting, I don't think is as crucial in your modeling this week. And if I had my preference, I would like guys that hit left to right, play a little bit of a fade. There seems to be a lot more trouble on the left-hand side of this course. So that's kind of my take on the course.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo what she said about long straight drivers. Like guys like Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler are obviously going to be good plays, but they're also going to be at the very top of the price spectrum. What I've been looking at is more specifically than par 4 scoring is approach proximity from 175 to 200 because of how many longer par 4s there are. You're going to see a lot of long to mid iron approaches to small greens, and it's going to require precision. And there's some interesting names that we're going to cover later that actually score incredibly well against the field in that specific category where the approaches are a long iron or a mid iron. And it's gonna create a lot of leverage scenarios where some of the usual suspects that we've kind of called as value picks in the past that have paid off for us are going to be back in play this week, where this is a very similar course if you just look at the surface of it to last week, where it's a similar yardage, par 70, but that's about where it ends because the last week you would get guys that could just bomb it down there and have a wedge in, and on this course you can't do that because you're making up the shorter yardage on the par 3s, and the par 4s are just gigantic. It's like if you don't score on those 2 par 5s this week, you are screwed.
Yeah, and kind of to your point, I actually backed it down just a little bit on the approach stat. I actually focused a little more on the 150 to 175 area, but I did do the specific, like I mentioned before, I did do the specific par 4 scoring on 450 to 500 to kind of counterbalance some of that. So I do think 150 to 200 is probably the combined proximities that you want to look at.
Yep.
Something
Agreed.
that I noticed as I did get to glance briefly at the sheet while you were talking that I study, DraftKings looks like they're making it very difficult for you to play any top tier 1 type players, at least together. You can probably fit one of those in, and then you're going to have to really work your way down on DraftKings this week because they've made that top echelon of players very pricey, which is not something we normally see. I don't feel like we see anything, more than 10-5 or even 10 a lot of times in DraftKings on that salary. So I found that to be super interesting because there are probably 10 guys at 10K or more this week.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm piecing it together using the Team Riser Fall Study Hub, but I'm also using the new PGA Stats model, which lets me filter and adjust the weights for each category, like which categories I really want to focus on and how much. And that really helped me last week was being able to use the premium features on Team Riser Fall to filter out the stats that I feel are less important and really weight heavily the ones that are. That's what led me to a lot of Tom Kim last week, and it's what it led me to a lot of Russell Henley again this last week for the second year in a row because he just plays well at Sedgefield. But this week it's going to be really important to figure out which stats are important and which ones aren't, because this is a loaded field. This is the playoffs. All the big boppers are here. And we have to be able to figure out who's going to be good leverage and who's going to be bad chalk so that we don't get caught spending a whole bunch of salary on guys that aren't going to really perform on this type of course, because it is really unique. That's the one thing about Southwind that I really noticed is this course is not like anything else on the tour.
Yeah, and you mentioned weighting of stats. Like I use a different engine than you guys do, obviously, but so generally speaking, one of the stats I weight really heavily every week is approach. This week's not a whole lot different, but I actually skewed a little bit on a couple of the models I did and really overweighted just overall ball striking. And then I actually baked in a tiny bit of short game, shots game, short game. And the only reason I did that is they are smaller complexes. But the other reason that I looked at it is some of these longer ball hitters, maybe in some areas that require a little shorter iron in than what we're projecting as the key approach distances. So having that little bit of backup in your model may help just to mitigate some of the risk. If you are purely isolating the proximity range and you're not looking at anything outside of it, which we all do, but if you're new to building models, it's definitely something. Always have a little bit of a backup plan to your statistics just to get a well-rounded golfer. So,
of course. Are you doing any Tennessee narrative? There are a handful of golfers in this field that are from the state of Tennessee and might have more experience at Southwind or just with the environment. Kelly, are you playing any Tennesseans?
I'm just eating a nutty bar.
Oh, I love those. Those are so good.
I mean, I'll jump in on that. I am not. And I mentioned to you guys earlier, part of the reason I am not is the way this course is set up for even a typical PGA event versus how it's set up for WGC are different things. And some of those, some of that course knowledge and where to land it and where to come in from and all that is going to be slightly different this week. So I'm not a huge narrative guy to begin with. And you don't have to talk a whole lot to get me to not read into a narrative. If they happen to be good golfers and fall under the narrative, cool, I'll play them. But
yeah,
that's why
I'll get to those in my. Yeah, there's a tier here with a couple of them.
I love a good narrative. It's one
we
of
know.
my faves. So I have not, to be honest, studied again enough today or even yesterday to know who would be coming out of Tennessee and have experience there. So why don't you lay that on me, because I would love to jump on board a good narrative. But before you do,
they're later on. They're both in the 7K tier.
What's up? Hope all.
Hey, Gator. Gator don't play no shit. Love that.
So many things I wanted to say right there, but
I feel like we should not slam some trunks right now, probably at this point.
Here's hoping.
Here's hoping.
The club is well. This would be a wrestling class.
Conor, you're the resident trunk slammer lately. How you feeling at the top of this ground here?
Hey, I'll say this, though I didn't get beat as bad this week in our. I mean, you crushed, but I actually did. I made my money back and then some, so I was all right, and not just.
You beat Kelly in ours, so I mean that's a change for you.
Thank God I have esports gambling. Otherwise, I'd be
right. League of Legends is keeping Conor afloat.
Yeah,
otherwise,
if anybody wants League of Legends,
he'd be pretending his internet was cutting out already again.
Just DM me. I'll be your sage advice.
I need to tail you on this,
Conor, where I just readily welcomed that I finally came in last. So kudos. You didn't come in last, and neither did Bo.
It's a rarity. It's a rarity that Kelly comes in last. So let's bask in that.
Not to get back to this, but I wasn't here for it. But the one thing I was going to say about our spin it back section that I think is important is that we all had a really good pool again, like collectively. I think where it got tricky is we tried to do some pivot plays off of some chalk, and we kind of got left holding the bag on a couple of what were perceived good values that were lower owned, and it just didn't pan out. Happens.
No, you're right. And that's something I brought up in the chat too. It's like, I looked at my lineup. and there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. Everybody made the cut. Everybody was in 60, 70, 80, 90 points across the board, but I didn't have that one breakout that you really need to get into the money, not just stay afloat.
Well, and for ours too, like I had Tom Kim in my lineup until the night before, and then I pivoted over to Pendrith, just knowing that Bo was going to play Tom Kim. And so I was like, you know what? I don't think Tom Kim's going to win. Truth be told, I was very wrong. But I thought Taylor
Final round
Pendrith
61.
I thought Taylor Pendrith was an equally good play, and so I made the pivot, just game strategy, trying to beat Bo, from the standpoint that I thought those two guys were live to win the tournament, and I thought Taylor Pendrith had a better opportunity. But anyways, getting into this week.
Craig, we never get to the 20th hole. It's
not televised anyway.
Usually occurs sometime around 1 a.m. So you want some really colorful commentary, DM me and I'll
the after dark version of this 19th hole, the 20th hole after dark.
So I know I'll just get it out there. I am going to play Rory this week, but that is not the guy that I really wanted to talk about.
No.
I do actually, for a lot of reasons, I do like him as per normal, but a couple of things that specifically stood out to me. He's number one over the last 36 rounds from par 4 scoring for the distances we're looking at. So I thought that was huge. And he's number 3 overall for ball striking. So as I weighted my modeling, those were two of the biggest stats I looked at. And he is by far and away, like collectively rating out the best. So Rory is one that I'm playing, but the big one over 9K that I really want to get into is Will Zalatoris. I think there is a lot of narrative that the guy can't putt, and I don't think it matters this week as I went over. And he is nails from the proximity range that we talked about, and he's also a pretty good driver of the golf ball. And I like some of the ball flight aspects, and he can shape it both ways. This course requires it, so I think Will Zalatoris, may find a victory this week. I really do. I feel good about him.
I think the only pricey player that I may work in this week will be Cantlay. And I don't exactly have a super great reason other than I look at his past event history. He's got some there, but the top 3 have good, event history. The top 4 have a good event history there. So that's not saying a whole lot. Sorry, traffic driving by, but course history in particular looks great for Cantlay as well as it does for Rory. I mean, the two of them could go head to head on this, and it would be a really great event, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Cantlay here. And we've already talked about a lot of the stats you're looking for when we talk about off the tee. Between the two of them, Rory drives much further, about 15 yards further. And below that is Scotty, who I typically go with my little Scotty, but I think I like Cantlay this week. He's got solid strokes gained across the board. Putting for these top 4, there are some issues that are popping up. But again, like you mentioned, not super serious on this course as a fault. And I do like the around the green scrambling for both Rory and Cantlay. But since you've already called out Rory, I'm going to stake some claim on Cantlay as my pricey pick this week.
I didn't want to carry on about Rory, but since you mentioned a couple of things, there is cause for concern with Rory for me, and that's it mainly lies in that 125 and in range. Like Rory will either be fire with his wedges or he'll be abysmal like he was the first half of the year. So that's maybe the part that scares me a little bit about Rory, and I think you do have to be aware of that because he hasn't been very consistent from that range this year. And you pointed out he does drive the ball farther than a lot of people. and I think he may be in that range frequently.
Yeah, I have all those guys mentioned. They're in the top 10 of my model. I think actually 11th is where Rory comes in on my modeling so far. That's subject to change, of course, as we get more information in from for the data. But my top two guys in this 10,000 and above range are Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler. They're my 1 and 2 in my model, and it's really not close. It's actually JT his metrics for what I'm looking for in this field are by far the best. And last week that was Russell Henley, followed by Tom Kim. So therefore I just went heavy bone on those two. And so I'm looking for values to fit both Scotty and JT in my lineups, because what I've been having a lot of success with lately is maybe eating some good chalk at the very top that I know are going to be strong contenders, make a bunch of birdies, and then look for my flyers that nobody is really going to have. And that's how I can break up some of that chalk. If I'm at 20%, like I was at 28%, Tom Kim was 28% rostered last week, and Henley was at 19. So I was definitely taking a shot there, because if both of those guys were panning out, which they did, it didn't help me as much as having the value picks underneath it to support it. But I love JT and I love Scotty.
Too.
So
I mean, there's really not a whole lot of ways to poke a hole in anybody above 10K. Like no. Any of them are live here.
They're up there for a reason, guys.
And they're really tightly like congested up there too. Like you're within $200 of each of them, so there's not a big spread. The only thing I was going to throw out before we move down from here is if you are looking for leverage in the 10 plus. Right now, it is unanimously going to be Cam Smith, who for the moment is not joining the Live Tour. We'll see, but
he's not announcing it himself so that he can play in the playoffs. That's what he said. He doesn't have a comment. He doesn't have any comment right now because he's ready for the playoffs.
I also feel like he's waiting to hear what that final ruling is going to be as far as the contract. I meant to bring that up at the beginning, but I forgot. So great segue. I do feel like there's some of that happening. What is this ruling going to be? How is it going to affect my ability to play in the PGA and in the Live Tour?
That's true. I think that your rostership projection right now is hedging, because as soon as they know for sure that Cam Smith is playing, he was the runner-up to Tony Finau last year in this tournament. So I don't think there's any chance that he stays leverage once we find out that he's for sure playing.
Craig, hang tight. You're going to get some different names that you haven't heard, because there's some weird ones at the bottom.
Yes, there are.
And to your point, Bo, on the hedging piece, if you assume that he's going to spike once it's officially like he's teeing it up, Patrick Cantlay is coming at 9.4 right now, early projection. John Rahm is actually the value here at 10K at 8.8. So he's sub 10%.
Leverage John Rahm. Give me all that. Give me all the leverage John Rahm.
Especially at 10K. And then your boy Fitzy, Kelly, is coming in lower than the rest of them at 9,800. So
interesting.
There's some good plays up there.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tough one to build around because there's a log jam at the top. So it's
that's what I was saying.
DraftKings doesn't want us to have fun. They just they're a bunch of masochists at DraftKings.
They're like, pick one.
Pick one and then fill in the rest with crap. Good luck.
Should we go in the 8Ks?
Sure.
Is there anybody else? Oh, no, 8. Let's do sub 9 because there's a couple guys in there to talk about.
Yeah, the 9s are pretty sparse. There's only, 4 or 5 in there?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'll just say it. I'm going to play Cam Young again. I mean,
yeah.
There's really no reason not
great
to.
Ball striker. He comes up pretty high in my modeling too. You mentioned Zalatoris already as a favorite. Finau won this tournament last week, so you can't ignore him. And he's also red hot right now. He's won his last 2 starts. Victor Hovland, one of the best ball strikers on tour. You don't need him really to do a whole lot. I mean, he's popping up. Like I'm not a huge fan of playing Zalatoris on or on Hovland on tough courses like this, but he's coming in. Let's see. Oh, I guess he's not that good on my board. He dropped down a little bit.
He's
Never
about
mind.
11,
Hovland.
11.5, 11 some change ownership wise.
Apparently, I lost him on the list here. Oh well. Continuing on.
Well, I would.
Are we
I
playing
was actually
Spieth though?
gonna,
Spieth is a good pick.
Yeah, I like Spieth and I like Hovland. I think I like Hovland better here on a course that's not going to require the short game as much. Like Spieth picks up a ton of strokes historically. That hasn't been the case lately, but historically he picks up a lot of strokes around the green, on the green. And I don't think that's as important this week. So within $100 of each other, I probably lean Victor Hovland here. Is like I said, if putting isn't a major concern and scrambling for him isn't going to be a major concern because of his approach game, take the wedge, like the short wedge out of his hand. I like Victor Hovland. I mean, to your point, he's an excellent
I'm opposite. I really liked Spieth as I was looking at who was available. Not my top pick, but if I were looking at who's my next pick there, it was Spieth. I'm still, again, this week drawn to Lowry. It feels not good, but looking at the data, which is something I stick to and I say every week, I see zero wrong when I look across the board at Lowry.
Mm-hmm.
So I like Lowry in the 8s. I like Spieth in the 8s.
Oh, you must be
Spieth
looking
is 91.
I'm looking at the wrong number. I like Lowry in the 8s. I like Spieth at 91.
91. Yeah.
Barely
And
in
I
the
just found it. I found it finally. So I have Hovland down at 23rd in the model, but Lowry's at 8th. So Lowry's definitely going in the pool, the famous pool. But guess what? Guess who I really, really like in the 8s. This is surprising because I don't know if he can hold up for the whole tournament. Hideki Matsuyama comes up 6th in my model here. So don't sleep on Hideki. And of course, Tony Finau comes up 3rd. I'm definitely gonna be playing a lot of Tony because Red Hot won last year at this tournament. I'll keep saying that. 9,700 Tony Finau, and then 83 Hideki. If he can stay keep from withdrawing, then Hideki could be a wild card here because I don't think a lot of people are going to roster him.
So if we're cruising into
before you jump in there, we should say good evening, and I want to know what's cooking at the lake house exactly. But let me know in the comments. Go ahead, Connor.
Oh no, I was just gonna say if we're gonna segue into the 8s, 2 guys that I'm looking at really, really hard right now. Colin Morikawa, who's on suppressed ownership. Honestly, Morikawa, in my mind, the biggest complaint I've had about him all season, and the reason I haven't been on him hardly at all, is the guy can't putt.
He's a baby.
Yeah.
But again, going with the narrative of putts not mattering this week, I think Colin Morikawa is still one of, if not the best ball striker on the tour. So I think if he puts together a really, really solid, accurate round, I don't think the putting matters. And so Colin Morikawa coming in sub 12% rostership at $8,700, I think that's criminal. Colin Morikawa is a guy that can absolutely win this, especially when you start looking at what that final score is going to be, which is probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 to 16 under would be my guess. That's bread and butter. It's a lot like Will Zalatoris. He's not going to make birdies in bunches, but he can compete in a lower scoring event like that. And then the second one I was going to bring up is how quickly everybody has forgotten about Sam Burns, who's also coming in at lower rostership. The guy bombs. He's got a decent short game, nothing to write home about. But one of the things I really looked at is par 4 scoring from 450 to 500 yards. He's rating in the top 10 on there still, and that's after some not so great performances. So I'm willing to pay $8,600 for Sam Burns, especially when some GM right below him, who rates out worse on a lot of those metrics, is coming in higher owned. So
Yep, I have Burns at 12th and M at 14th. But that's a really good, because if Burns is coming in at lower rostership, then you obviously play Burns, because I mean they have the identical fantasy points per game, 75.9. Sam Burns only $100 more, and so you take your shot on the guy who's everybody's not going to have. Sung JM is on the forefront again because he played so well last week. I love him. I'll have him in the pool, but I'll have more Sam Burns because of that leverage aspect. You gotta play the percentages because you're not competing against anybody but everybody. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you're in a tournament, you're going to have a couple thousand entries. Like the one I'm building for right now is 9,800 entries, and you have to be able to beat everybody else at the same game, and it's really tricky. But sometimes you have to take the names completely out of it just so you can get an edge on the field.
I would like to chime in and say, I don't know that I am on board with this whole narrative of that putting doesn't matter in this tournament. I think putting always matters. It may not be as important, but I think it matters. It still matters. You gotta make a putt.
I'll apologize for Conor. He worded it very poorly.
Very poorly.
Putting is not a separating metric this week. It's not going to separate the field.
No, I worded it exactly how I meant to. Putting doesn't matter this week.
Putting matters always. That's like saying defense doesn't matter.
Which I also buy into in DFS purposes.
Oh, yeah. Goodness.
I play the defense every week.
You don't have Kiradek Afi Barnrat blocking the hole for his playing partners.
You guys are killing me. But I would like to say now I'm super hungry because
I read that too.
Cooking at the Lake House is having a yummy steak burrito, but wishes they had elk meat and also called me beautiful. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I feel like
she sees it.
Why does nobody call me beautiful?
Always matters. Putting always
you don't qualify.
Matters.
You're not a separating metric. Beauty doesn't matter, Conor. If putting doesn't matter, then beauty definitely doesn't.
And apparently, I need some new glasses to drink out of. I have plastic, and I have baby mason jars. That's just because this was my first official stay in the studio. I just haven't had a chance to really. It's hard to pack glasses in your suitcase. I broke my TV, if anybody cares. So bringing glasses would have been even worse probably. But the bourbon made it, and that's all that matters.
That is true.
Hey, two more in the 8s just to get them out there before we move into the 7s. Sorry about your TV. Hopefully you win a ton of money this week and you buy a new one. But putting doesn't matter. So if you're not following that narrative, you're not winning a TV. So the two guys I wanted to bring up that I play pretty frequently, Billy Horschel and Joaquin Niemann. And Joaquin Niemann's actually coming in sub 7% ownership projection.
Oh, yes.
So Joaquin, somebody that I personally have gone back to multiple times this year. I like him on a course that requires multiple shot shapes, multiple ball flights, and that's what this course is. So I think Joaquin Niemann is a sneaky good play at $8,100. And then obviously we're all probably going to play Tom Kim.
Yeah, you gotta have to, because you can't stop. You can't walk away from a heater, and there's no hotter player on the planet right now than Tom Kim. The 20-year-old kid, he went out in 27 shots last week on Sunday. 27 on the front 9 is ridiculous, and then a 61 to win by 4. I mean, just think about I was pretty much on a ledge with 40% exposure to Tom Kim when the first hole of his tournament he gets a quadruple bogey 8. I was on the ledge already. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is the worst game ever. And lo and behold, the guy is absolutely money, and he's going to be absolutely chalky this week, but you're going to have to eat some of it.
Well, and if you think about it, weeks ago when we first brought him up on the show, nobody even knew who he was. Everybody's like, who the hell is Young Kim? And it's like, well, it's Tom Kim. and he's 34th in the world ranking right now. So you should play him. And now he's like the chalkiest dude in DFS, but whatever.
I have one more in the 8s that we should probably bring up. That's kind of a nostalgic fun play for me now and then. Billy Horschel. He's there in the 8s, like 8-1, I think. I feel like that could be a good play again based on data driven only. There's
Science.
She doesn't listen to you, Connor.
I don't listen to Conor, obviously.
Obviously.
Or
read the group chat. I mean,
he's got event history. He's not been terrible. He's got, he's got strokes gained going on, but I don't know. I just like Billy Ho happening. So that could be
so I have to ask you, Connor, what's the projected rostership on Billy Ho?
That's a good question. And to be honest, I haven't looked at it because Billy Ho to me was one of those guys, like I said, it's 12.5%, which they're actually calculating that that'll get pivoted out. Most of it going to
I'm a little concerned.
Hey, hold on.
Go for it.
Just because it's an important point about rostership. It looks like the projection is actually dipping on Horschel and going to Shane Lowry. So, and to be honest, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference in the two of their game, and especially in a lower scoring event. That's why I was hot to trot on Billy Ho. I love Billy Ho 12 to 15 under. If you told me we're approaching 20, Billy Ho might finish T20.
Well, I just wanted to call that out. I wanted to call that out in the 8s while we were talking about it, because right below that is friend of the show or not friend of the show, Max Homa at 7-9, who is always one of my faves. But when I look at the data for him, it makes me want to cry other than strokes gained. Because he hasn't been looking very good history-wise, event-wise, but off the tee, he's pretty great, actually. He's over 300 yards off the tee. He's 61% driving accuracy, with 82% of those being good drives. Greens in regulation, 66%. I mean, if we're not going to talk about approach or anything like that, I mean, I like me some Max Homa. I always do. I just do.
So
that was the 7-9. I mean,
I'd rather play the guy at 7-8.
I would rather play the guy 7-8 as well. But I will say I'm Max Homa. I'm Max Homa, friend, not enemy of the show. The biggest concern I have with him is he rates out 70th in this field for fairways gained. He rates out 70th in this field for greens and regulation. And
in this particular field, so that's rough. That is rough.
And going with my no putt narrative, if you're not hitting the green, then I definitely need you to putt, because
66% greens and regulations nets him out at 70th. That's terrible.
Well, it only does because this course, believe it or not, even with smaller green complexes, actually has like I think it's just under 0.5% higher greens and regulation hit than any other course on the tour. So for whatever reason, these greens are pretty makeable. I can't tell you because I've looked at them and they don't look super easy. But statistically, you'll find that this has got one of the higher greens and regulation for the entire field on the tour in a calendar year. So I like Max Homa a lot of times, but I think Bo's going to say the same guy I am, which is Russell Henley, and I'll let him talk about him.
Russell Henley comes up 5th in my model at 7,800. I played him last week. Again, similar courses, but Henley's even better on longer approaches than he is on shorter approaches that we were focusing on last week. He's number 1 strokes gained and approach this in this field, which is pretty impressive because everybody else is pretty damn good. All the way across to proximity. he's really good from 150 to 175. He's even better from a little bit shorter. He's a pretty long hitter. I like how he putts better on Bermuda than he does anywhere else, which is why he played well last week. Henley is just good. He's a solid player, 7,800. He's not going to pick up a ton of popularity with all the other guys around him. I can't get away from him, and I'd rather play him over Homa or Hatton or even my guy from Oregon, Aaron Wise.
So his final rostership projections looking like it's probably going to be somewhere 15 to 16%, which is not super chalk, but it's definitely chalk.
Not like last week.
No. To be honest, the guy that is chalk in this 7,000 range that I am definitely going to be playing is Corey Connors. And I'll tell you why. Like, not only has his putting gotten exponentially better, but
Doesn't matter.
That's fine, but he's in the top 10 in every approach and ball striking metric over the last 36 rounds. So you add that to the fact that he is putting better. That to me just says that he's not going to miss the easy 5-footers that Corey Connors is notorious for. So that's all I'm looking for from Corey Connors. Putting doesn't matter, but with Corey Connors, like, can you make a 5-foot putt? And I think he can.
Corey Connors might be the least clutch player in the world.
Oh, I really like Corey Connors this time around, so I'm on board with Conor. And I also am going surprise Taylor Pendrith again this week. So those are two biggies for me in the 7th. Love the Connors call. Sorry, Bo. Yay, Conor. And then Pendrith.
How much is Connors? Oh, 76? Yeah, miss me with that. I'd rather play Chris Kirk, who's from Tennessee. There's your first Tennessee narrative. Chris Kirk playing much better than Corey Connors this season. Much better than Corey Connors lately this season. He's $200 less. He's averaging 65.7 DK points per week, which is about 1.5 less than Connors over the year. But this is crazy how you're going to have Corey Connors who every time he's close, he chokes. Every time he's not close, he's way not close. He'll miss the cut by 5-6 strokes every fourth week. And you're like, oh, he could be good this week. No, he sucks. And even when he's scoring good DK points, he should be winning the tournament, and he just falls apart like a lawn. He falls apart like a wedding cake.
Aggressive. Look how
I am not playing Corey Connors this week. I played him last week, and he was abysmal.
All right, so I have two questions. First off, the last comment that came up said Arrowhead Country Club. Where's that person from? Because there's an Arrowhead Country Club about 20 minutes from where I grew up in Colorado.
Where are you from while you're cooking at the lake house?
But I'm guessing Lake House is not Colorado.
Could be Missouri, like where Kansas City Arrowhead Stadium, maybe.
I'll be there next week, actually. Might have to do the show from there.
We have an Arrowhead Country Club in lovely Glendale, Peoria, Arizona, suburb of Phoenix, and it's like a lake, Arrowhead Lakes. Wouldn't that be hilarious?
What are the odds?
But it's not really.
I'm playing Chris Kirk over Connors 100% of the time.
Okay,
fine.
So
I don't go with it, Bo.
I don't know what modeling you're running, but Corey Connors, at least in the metrics we're looking at on 36 rounds, outpaces Chris Kirk. I am playing Chris Kirk. I like Chris Kirk, but I would not say directly I'm pivoting one way or the other. I will most likely have both of them in a lineup, and then the other one at 7,500 that I will definitely be playing this week is Mito Pereira. So,
back to the old torture chamber.
I love Mito. He rates out in the top 10 in my model for this week. Like he's got the tools on the ball striking, the approach game, and I think that he's one of those guys that was a DFS darling for about 3-4 weeks in the middle of the season, and now people want to play these other guys that were like higher ownership, obviously on Connors, Pendrith, Keegan Bradley, Chris Kirk. Like Mito Pereira is every bit as good as any of them. And to my point, actually better in most of the approach metrics. So Mito Pereira is in my pool this week.
I'm just really surprised at the amount of hate that Bo is throwing at Connors, and I'm wondering
I
where
spent a lot of salary last week on Corey Connors, and he sucked. So
well,
I'm
last
pissed.
week was not Corey Connors' week. This week is Corey Connors' week, sir. Where is our friend Royal Slade? And he should be talking about this right now.
Hey,
Yeah.
I didn't say I didn't like Pendrith or the other Canadians. I just don't like Connors. I love Canadians, but Corey Connors is the exception this week. Even though he's 20th in my modeling, I'm just ticked off at him. He's 20th. And you just said Mito. Mito's 24th, so I like Connors a little bit more metric-wise, but I'm not playing him. I'm going to skip him because I'm just
talk about
ticked
a
off.
narrative.
Right,
Goodness
yeah.
gracious. Go
And Chris
back.
Kirk is 14th in my model, so you can take that for what it's worth.
I love
14th
Chris
over
Kirk.
20.
I love the story on Chris Kirk. I want Chris Kirk to put up a W somewhere. I love the fact that he's like a recovering alcoholic.
He's
even
from
though
Tennessee.
even
There you
though
go. Narrative.
like against what we do on this show every week. I still love Chris Kirk. I'm root for him every week. I hope he does well in my player pool. I have no beef with either one of them, but I do think there's three dudes in the sevens that we definitely need to talk about. Scott Stallings, who's one of the hottest players on the planet right now at 7,100. He'll make my pool.
Guess where he's from?
Is he from Tennessee?
He is.
So Scott Stallings, in case you don't watch golf every week, Scott Stallings has been on a tear, and not only that, but he's scoring a lot of DraftKings points for you. And at $7,100, that feels almost criminal that he's priced lower than somebody like Mav McNeely, who, quite frankly, rates out 101st in my model. I love Mav, but I mean, explain to me the pricing here. And he's the same price as Ches Reavie. Give me a break.
That's rough.
And then the other two guys, Brendan Steele is one. Brendan Steele is the sub 8K chalk of the week. Everybody is talking about Brendan Steele, but for good reason. He has excellent ball striking. He's number 2 in the model. I think that's only behind maybe Justin Thomas. And then his off the tee game is actually sneaky good. He drives the ball about 300 yards and he has about a 65% fairways in regulation. So Brendan Steele rather is somebody who at 7K is a spot where I might eat chalk and try and deviate somewhere else. And then my last one before we get into our dart throws is Adam Long, who reportedly withdrew from sickness, but Adam Long had been playing really well. Another Canadian. And the big metric that stands out like a glowing endorsement for this guy is he's excellent at hitting the green. He's number 5 in this field for greens and regulation, which you wouldn't expect given that he's kind of in the middle of the field for approach and ball striking. But off the tee is adequate. And his key proximity 150 to 175 is in the top 15. So, and he does hit the fairway, top 20 for fairways and regulation. And like I said, 5th for greens and regulation gains. So Adam Long, if he tees it up and is healthy and good to go, is somebody who's been sneakily playing really well under the radar at 7K.
Yep. I'm with you on all those guys. Scott Stallings especially. Scott Stallings, holy crap, what a value. 7,100, playing lights out from Tennessee. Checks all the boxes. Moving on. Value picks. I have one guy. Guess where he's from?
Is he from NorCal or Tennessee?
Actually, I have two. I have one from NorCal and one from Tennessee. The one from NorCal, of course, is Kurt Kitayama, one of the best long iron approach guys on the tour this year. As a rookie, he's red hot. Kurt Kitayama, of course, I'm going to play him. I don't know how much I'm going to play because other than long iron play, he's not really rating out that well on this course, but I'm going to have a piece of him. The guy I really want to play is Luke List because if putting doesn't matter, then we got to play Luke List, who's a world-class ball striker, 6,500. He's from Tennessee, and he can't putt worth a lick. I could probably beat him in a putting contest, but he's an absolutely awesome ball striker. So I'm going to be playing Luke List all over the place at 6,500.
Same.
I don't even know what to say about this non-putting, but okay, let's talk about some value picks. I do like the Scott Stallings pick as well. I like it. Let's go with it. But you know who really
unanimous
stands out for me that for some reason I just love, and it is going to be
I bet he has
We're
kind
not
of.
care about putting. It's gonna be Johnny Vegas. Johnny Vegas, I think, has it in him to pull something out this week. And of course, I can't go a week without playing Matt Kuchar, Mr. Kind Eyes, Backdoor Cooch, who always manages to sneak, and that is not in the way you're thinking, manages to sneak in, swoop
In the post show,
in.
can you explain to me what a backdoor cooch is?
I'm
Those
just only
in my mind.
And how can you tell his eyes are kind from the back door?
oh my gosh. I'm telling you right now, he swoops in, he grabs the money, and he goes home. He does not care necessarily about winning, but he does get in there, stacks up, takes the dollars, and leaves. So
He
if
also
you're
does not care about hitting greens.
I like Matt Kuchar every day of the week, and that's just fine.
According to Conor, he's also much too good of a putter for this type of course.
Much too good of a putter. Indeed.
Truth.
And then I know I already said I had my last one, and I already said my last one, but I also kind of like Brendan Steele, if I'm not hiccuping. Excuse me. But yeah, I just like those guys. Johnny Vegas. Did we talk about JT Poston?
Bo, do you realize that she actually doesn't listen to me?
Yeah, that's the second time this show that she's reiterated something like you never said it.
Like I talked about Brendan Steele for like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you that I like Brendan Steele.
Yeah, but nobody brought it up until Kelly did.
No, I said, did anybody talk about JT Poston?
No, we did not. That one's off. That one's not. That one has not been covered.
Rude today. So rude.
Oh, we're just busting your chops. Relax.
Whatever.
You're fine.
I do like. I'm with you on Brendan Steele, JT Poston. If you're just looking at finish probabilities out of everybody in the 7s, 7-3 and below, or even maybe all of the 7s and a lot of the 8s, his finish probability is much higher actually than a lot of these people. So if that's something that you like to look at, JT Poston could be a good solution. I just want to throw that out there. Finish probabilities.
The postman's legit, and he played well last week. And this is a very similar course, and I think it does play to his strengths. So I do like the Poston pick. Somebody that we didn't talk about that's right there with him and has a similar skill set as Adam Hadwin. So I did want to throw him out real quick.
Canada.
More Canadians. But we're getting a little long here, so I'll just I do want to throw out a couple of what I perceive to be value plays this week. So I'll start with somebody that I'm not going to get roasted over, so that Bo can take us out on one that I will. So it's 6,700. Lahiri, Anaban Lahiri, who Kelly was on last week. I think this course potentially is an even better fit for him. A course that requires accuracy and ball striking. Lahiri is both of those things. Rates out in the top 10 for strokes gained off the tee. So Lahiri at 6,700, rates out 25th in my model overall. Wears 2 gloves. What else do you need? Another guy that wears 2 gloves on occasion, Aaron Rye. Rye.
Yep.
Another guy that I think has an adequate game from 450 to 500 par 4 scoring potential, and he also hits fairways and he also hits greens. So some of the scrambling metrics, some of the putting metrics that normally would get me off of him don't, in my opinion, don't matter this week. So, and then there was one other guy that I will be trying again this week. And that is JJ Spawn down at 6,400. I like JJ Spawn in spurts. He's definitely not doing anything that gets me off of him. So I love the proximity metrics that he has from 150 and in. He rates out number 7 in this model. So at $6,400, I think he'd do a hell of a lot worse than JJ Spawn. And so I'll have some shares of him, especially when I'm trying to stack top heavy. So
Tyler Duncan is my last guy in right now. Yeah, so he's in the top 30 of my ranking model. So it's that's right now. That's last man in is T Dunk, but we'll see if he survives the night when I write it up tonight.
Oh, and then Tom Hoagie, 28th in my model.
Boo! God, what a roller coaster that guy is.
Kills it from 150 to 200. Kills it.
Yeah, he's a long iron dynamo.
Is there no NASCAR tonight? Is that why we're just going long?
I don't know if Seth hasn't yelled.
Or we just don't care, yeah.
Well, I would like to say that even though I felt hugely unprepared this evening, which is not very much like me, I did enjoy my bourbon and I did enjoy the company even when you were grumpy.
Also, we should give our boy Seth a shout out before we get off here. He
Yes.
was holding strong on Callum Tarrant, and I will tuck my tail. He did score some points and he did play well. So shout out to Seth for riding that train, and he may weasel his way into a couple of my lineups. That's all.
Yeah, he actually made a couple birdies on Sunday to make it all worthwhile.
A couple birdies. Yay.
Usually he's just around par barely.
I'm just being mean because, yeah. Anyway. This was fun, you guys. Looking forward to next week. And if you're going to be at the expo, see you at the expo for fantasy.
See you there, Kelly. See you there.
I won't be there.
I will be on a panel for DFS and sports betting, and I will be on a panel for women in sports. So be sure to be there. And
we're going to have to watch the tournament Sunday, to you and me next to each other, Kelly, so we can really, especially if it's close, like down the stretch. Kelly and I are going to be like punching each other as shots are being made. I can just see it.
Oh, that's true. I mean, we'll get to watch it together.
Better zoom me in. Zoom me in.
FaceTime. I was going to say we could FaceTime Conor in.
I'm not an Apple person. We'll figure it out.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. See you next week.